safe. Under the cover of darkness, thou will be saved. To heal the deepest scars, I think one to start. Undying faith in me will bring liberty.
Welcome and good morning, everyone, to another episode of Situational Awareness Matters, Real Talk with Real People. Today, we have literal life-saving discussion ahead of us. We're going to be taking a deep dive into the realms of emergency preparedness, covering topics such as stop the bleed training, advanced first aid, and their relationship to firearms training. I mean, the challenge is you don't know what you don't know, so let's get right to it. I am your host, Lee Schwartzberg, and joining me as always are my esteemed co-hosts, Rennie Archibald and Chet Babcock. Good morning, gents.
Good morning.
All right, kick things off. Let's first talk about what it means to prepare to self-rescue. Gents, we talk about this all the time, right? Prepare to self-rescue, and it's a tagline, and really what it means is prepare to self-rescue. What do you know? What don't you know? What are you going to do when the shit hits the fan and your local resources, fire, PD, EMS, even your power supply companies turn off the electricity on a dangerous site like that? It means know what. Okay, there's a lot in my head right now. It's trying to all come out at once. So let me take a deep breath. So know what to do when it comes time to do. Prepare to self-rescue means you're it. Tag, you're it. You're the one. You are the one who's going to rescue yourself. All right, Chet, anything you want to say on that before I get into the nuts and bolts of this?
No, like you said, prepare to self-rescue. Help may or may not be coming. You may be the only thing. You may be 20 minutes away from help. At this point, you don't know. But as our mantra is, it's always better to be prepared.
Absolutely. Rennie?
No, I agree. Helps a long way away when the shit hits the fan.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in detail here shortly. So let's jump right into the big part of this. And for those of you who don't know, Stop the Bleed, or the STB initiative, is actually a federally funded contract throughout the United States. And it's on the heels of the COTCCC. This is just a fancy acronym for Tactical Casualty Combat Care. It's just the best practices that our boys and girls in the military have found out to help trauma and bleeding control. So, real quick, gents, do you guys carry an IFAC, or individual first aid kit, on your EDC, which is your everyday carry?
Yep.
All right, so I took the liberty of, I don't know, is this look upside down? There we go. Right, so tourniquet, gloves, right? Everything else you have, well, you can't really see it in here, but this is an individual first aid kit, and it goes right on my belt. Well, my belt's behind me, but every day I carry it. It's my individual first aid kit. Now, I want to make this clear. Rennie, you know this. Chet, you know this. Absolute 100%. Your IFAC, your individual first aid kit, is for you when you personally get injured, not for anyone else. Because if you cannot help yourself, you cannot help anyone else.
That is correct.
End of story. End of story, right? So in my IFAC, I have some hemostatics. I have Quick Clot, but there's also Chitosan, Celox, or something like that. There's a tourniquet, an Israeli pressor bandage, some chest seals, and most of mine. No, it's in here, yeah. So I have a mini marker, like a permanent marker, to write either on the forehead the time of the tourniquet application, or to write on the tab of the tourniquet, which we'll get to in a second here on this other one. Right, actually on the tab, you see the tab right here?
Yeah.
Now, something I want to talk about here real quick is how you get these tourniquets. As I drop this thing, as you see, can you hear that and see that? This is plastic, right? You can see the plastic on here. this is how you get them. This is not how you should store them. You get them like this so they stay clean. In an oh shit situation, when the shit hits the fan and you need this goddamn tourniquet for yourself, and your hands are full of your own blood, you can't get your gloves on, first of all. Second of all, your hands are going to be slippery and wet. It's going to be hard as hell to open this thing when you need it. So I see all these buff people and all these buff, oh, I do this, I do that, I'm on tactical this, I'm on tactical. Shut up, jerk off. You have your tourniquet in a plastic wrapper. It's just for show. You cannot use this when you need it. This is called staging, right? You cannot stage it like this. Hey, gents.
Yes.
Just so we let all of our esteemed listeners and watchers know, we are all first aid CPR instructors, certified, all these 3-letter blah, blah, blah. That doesn't mean shit, right? What means anything is we've been there, we've done that. We've applied tourniquets when we needed them. I know some instructors who are just good at regurgitating, looking at a screen and reading the paperwork or, watching the video. Doesn't mean shit. You got to know how to do it, right? I talk about this all the time. Gents, we talk about this all the time. When your blood pressure or your heart rate goes above 140, what happens? You start to lose your fine motor skills, right? And we'll talk about later on when we talk about the firearms training. But when you're doing this, it's hard to pull the trigger or get anything on target, right? So if you're not training and you don't have the mental acuity to understand that, okay, take a deep breath. I know I can die in 30 seconds to a minute and a half if I don't get this goddamn tourniquet on. Oh, wait, oh, shit. I forgot to take it out of the plastic wrapper. I didn't stage it properly. You know what? That's the last thing you're going to think of before you pass out.
Yeah, let me to expand on what you just said. This would be mine. This is my minimalist kit. Okay. Tourniquet staging.
Right. And it's staged properly. You open it up, you flip it. Right.
There we go.
It's on Velcro.
Yep. Boy, this is not impressive. Anyway, here you go. Okay,
Right.
and it slides in, then you adjust accordingly to where
Right. Exactly. Right. So, Rainey, the kits we spoke about, I guess that was like, I don't know, when did I see you? Like 2 months ago, 3 months ago?
Yeah.
What the ones we spoke about? I told you how to stage the tourniquet the right way.
Yeah.
Right. So all you have to do is flip it, and it's wide.
Yeah.
Right. We're not going to talk about how to do that today because that's a separate entirety class. But I will say that the way to use your tourniquet, the way to stage your tourniquet, is almost as important as choosing the right tourniquet. So, with that being said, let's go talk about stop the bleed here. Let me get this real quick. Sorry, boys, I'm on my phone today, and it's crooked. So if I keep adjusting this, because I think I look crooked, so my head keeps going sideways.
Before we go there, I got a couple of points to make along your equipment setup. Okay, this is my minimalist kit. All right, it contains a tourniquet, it contains a big plastic bag, and it contains a pressure dressing and some tape. And that's mainly for like sucking chest wounds, penetrating injuries, and for bleeding. That's it. Okay,
For you.
For me.
For you.
Now, my work kit is something a little bit different. All right, which this has all the cool shit in it. For others. Okay, it's all in there. So, they come up with all this high-speed, low-drag gear. You really just need the basics to take care of yourself with a personal IFAX.
Right. So great point, right? So carry what you need for you, and then have or know where your stop the bleed kit or your trauma response kit is for wherever you are, right? So this is my personal belt that I carry every day at work, right? Where'd my IFAC go? It's over here. So this is my IFAC, right? And this is everything else I need to carry on for the day's work. Now, why is that important? Because everyone needs to know where your own personal shit is. You have to put it on, put it in the same place, know where it is. So when you create this training regimen or regime, whatever you want to call it, you have to know. Rennie, we spoke about this a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
You come home every day. And you do your training, right? What was that?
My dry fire.
Yeah, right. You're dry fire training every day, right? So,
Yeah. 10 minutes.
right. So that's in your muscle memory. You don't want, let's talk about one thing very quickly. And, gents, tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, is that you don't rise to the occasion when shit happens. You fall to the lowest level of your training, whatever that is.
Yep.
And if that's, your flight, fight, or freeze response, if that's your freeze response, when the shit hits the fan and it's time and you get shot and, there's some serious arterial bleeding going blah, 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 like that. And arterial bleeding versus venous bleeding, right? You'll know that, oh shit, I have less than a minute to put this tourniquet on. When I teach the Stop the Bleed class, I personally tell everyone, all right, unhook your tourniquets, put them on, cinch them on, and get them in. All right, we do that the first time. I don't care where they take it from. I just want them to get used to putting the tourniquet on, getting it out and putting it on. The second, third, and fourth time, I tell them take it out of your pocket. Put it in your pocket, take it out. You are not going to have your tourniquet in your hand when you get shot or when you need it. So practice and train. All
I
right.
carry two. So the one I carry up front of my duty belt has no markings on it. That's mine. I tell everybody that's mine. The one I
The
carry on
sterile
the other side that has a capital Q on it, that's for John Q. Public.
John Q. Public, right.
That's his. Once that's gone, everybody else is shit out of luck.
Right. So that brings us, let's go full circle all the way back, right? When you're shit out of luck, prepare to self-rescue.
Exactly.
There it is, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about the nationwide campaign. So this covers the Stop the Bleed campaign, covers life-saving techniques that anyone, regardless of medical background, which means you don't need to be an EMT, you don't need to be a firefighter, you don't need to be a cop, you don't need to be a doctor, a nurse, or a trauma flight medic or a trauma flight nurse to use this. You can use this to prevent excessive blood loss in emergency situations, natural disasters, mass casualty events, active shooters, or terrorist bombings. So, hey, boys, I got a quick question. What is the benchmark to know, or the standard to know when applying any tourniquet? How do you know it's working?
You got to know, number one, you got to know where to apply it. Number two, you'll be able to tell that it's working if you don't see any bleeding.
When the bleeding stops, right?
Losing, yeah.
Yeah, that's the benchmark. That's the move. That's the move, right? When the bleeding stops, then you know it's working.
Yeah.
Can you apply more than one tourniquet? Absolutely. Do you take the first tourniquet off as applying the second tourniquet? No.
No.
Right? When we talk about tourniquets, we're talking about these things, right? We're going to get in. I hate this camera. It confuses me. I got to go left when it's right, and it's right when it's left. So let's talk about the tourniquet portion of it, right? Has anyone ever seen the RAT tourniquet, the RAT tourniquet?
That's a good point you brought up about if you got to put a second one on, don't take the first one off. Because I was involved in something 4 weeks ago, and the surgeon ordered a second tourniquet, but he said, don't take the first one off.
Right.
Leave it in place.
Right. And the reason for that is once the tourniquet starts squeezing and you get that benchmark where there's no more blood coming out of whatever injury site or wound it is, it starts to clot and coagulate. So, of course, there's no blood flow, right? There's no pulse in the extremity that you're using it. Oh, which, by the way, you can only put tourniquets on extremities. I don't care what they told you, right? Even if it's your ex-wife's mother-in-law and she's bleeding from her neck, you cannot put a tourniquet around her neck to stop the bleeding, right? We didn't.
Well,
no
you
one
could. I mean, you could,
well,
but it's not,
Could you
Right.
try?
you
Let me
shouldn't.
rephrase that. You could do that. It's just not recommended that you do that, right? So tourniquets are for extremities only. We'll talk about wound packing and those other things for junctional tourniquets on another show. But right now, just know that extremities only, arms and legs for tourniquets, high and tight for everything.
Yeah, and they're also for like arterial bleeds. If you have blood spurting out or whatever, it's not really recommended so much for like a scraped knee or something like that.
Oh, that's a great point,
Even
right?
going through a gunshot wound, I mean, if it's just slap a pressure dressing on it.
Right. So when do you apply a tourniquet?
Yeah, if you have an
Arterial bleed. When you see
Arterial.
it,
Right.
when you see it squirting.
And why does it squirt like that?
Huh?
Why does it squirt like that?
Because it's an artery and the heart's pumping like a bastard.
Because your heart, yeah, right. Every time you see that blah blah,
Yeah.
that's your heartbeat pushing the blood back out.
Yeah.
Right. So you can bleed out in 30 seconds to a minute and a half. Right. So you have basically 20 seconds to put that tourniquet on, prepare to self-rescue for yourself. Right. So arterial bleeding versus venous bleeding. Can you die from venous bleeding? Yes. Right. If it's left uncontrolled. But the tourniquet is for uncontrollable bleeding, mostly arterial bleeding. Okay. So now we get that, right? Thank you for bringing that up. You know, because in my head, I already know that, but sometimes I fail to recognize that we're even though it's the three of us, we're talking to other people as well. Just so you guys know, I cannot see our messages. So if you guys see the messages, please feel free to respond. I can't see them. Okay. So when we talk about tourniquet application, right? We talk about these tourniquets here. We're going to get to something else in a minute. But never use shoelaces, strings, or cables or wires or anything like that as a tourniquet because you're trying to occlude the artery. You're not trying to sever the artery, right? So it's got to be at least 1.5 inches to 2 inches wide in order for it to start to occlude the artery. Now, when we talk about the tourniquet, right? Let's talk about the parts. I'm going to open this one up because it's got to go into my iPad anyway. Hold on. So, all right. So you see here, look. That was what? 3-4 seconds to open that up, and it's not staged properly. So when you take this, and my hands are dry. My hands are wet with blood, my own blood. It's going to take forever to open that up. And the last thing I'm going to remember is, oh shit, I probably should have done that before I got shot, right? That's as the darkness closes in. So let's talk about the parts of the tourniquet. This is called the windlass. Where's my camera? You see the deep bevels in the windlass here? That's so you can grip it and turn it. Now, when I teach this, we teach it to stage right here. So when you open the tourniquet up and you apply it and you put it on, the way you apply it is, hold on, I lost my camera. Yeah, give me a second. I lost my camera. There we go. All right. When you apply the tourniquet, when you pull this tight, really tight up here, this right here, and you pull it really tight, this should be, when you tighten the windlass, the proper way to do it and the most effective way to do it is once you pull out the slack on your windlass and you make it tight, you should only need a half a turn to come all the way back into your connectors or your lockers, the locking pieces here. Once you do that, you can see and you'll hear it on the person you're applying it to. They're like, oh shit, that hurt. And in your mind, you'd be like, yeah, it hurts because I'm doing it right. So when you do it a half a turn, turn the windlass in, drop it back into the connectors, cover it, and where is it? Right there. It says time right here. You can actually write the time on this when you applied it. The reason you write the time on the tourniquet or on the forehead in permanent markers so that the emergency responders know when the tourniquet was applied. Now, there are different rules of thought here, depending on which medical organization you're talking to. On the average, you can keep a tourniquet on from 6 to 8 hours before you have irreparable damage. But oh wait, isn't death irreparable? So never take this off once you apply it. Once you put this on, and then you tuck the tail in, put the time on, you leave it on. The benchmark for you to know if your tourniquet is working is always, is the bleeding stopped? If the bleeding doesn't stop, so one of two things is happening. Your tourniquet isn't on tight enough, or it loosened before you tightened it. That's the only two things that will help stop the bleeding on there.
I have a question, Instructor Lee.
Yes, sir.
What happens if you don't take the tourniquet off, like for hours? What happens to the body?
Is that again? That also depends on which medical agency you're talking to and what doctor you're talking to. But the Tactical Casualty Combat Care Manual for the military says you can leave it on for 6 to 8 hours. After that, you start to run the risk of blood gases. After you take it off, the blood gases from, let's just say the tourniquet is up here, it starts to cause a backwards buildup and build poison gas in there. So, and noxious. I forgot the actual medical terminology, but the challenge then becomes if you take it off and the bleeding stops and it's coagulated and the arterial bleeding somehow magically stop bleeding on its own, you can actually poison them.
Mhm.
That's what
That's
that's
the
what
point.
it says.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're out like 24 hours or 48 hours away from any kind of out in the forest someplace, then
Right, but then it's life over limb.
Yeah.
Then it's life over limb. But what happens? I forget the actual medical terminology, but I will tell you it's poison because it backs up and it builds up, and all that. When you release it, I mean, you're probably going to lose that limb anyway. But when you release it, it releases poison gas buildup from the tourniquet.
back
That's a
into
great, right. That's a great question, actually.
Yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
very few. Yeah, very few people know to ask that question. So thank you. All right. So let's talk about very quickly here, cheap tourniquets. Right. And this is the same thing when we get into the firearms later on. We talk about cheap ammo and your cheap rigs and everything else. You will always get what you pay for. In particular, the cheap tourniquets are great for training and pressure testing. That's it. They're great for training and pressure testing, and you can see where they're breaking, you can see where they fail. And the military one has these green. So I didn't bring one today, but they have this green circular one where it's like a half moon dial, and you have to click it to turn it. Just remember, just because it's military grade and military quality doesn't mean it's good quality. Just means it was made by the lowest bidder.
Yeah,
That's what it means. Right, it means the lowest bidder. So those things actually, those click turns, the half moon, they turn. It's supposed to cause a gripping motion as you lock it down. They break and they freeze. Oh well. Right. So know what you're buying, know what you get, know what you're buying into. Let's see. So when your life is on the line, do you want a $10 tourniquet or do you want a $30 tourniquet like the industry standard has? Right. The windlass will fail and break or bend when applying pressure. The stitching will start to come unraveling. The buckle or the connector will fail. And when any of this happens and you have a failure, what's going to happen? You're not going to stop the bleed, right? It's called a catastrophic failure for a reason. Now, there are 5 ways to spot a fake or counterfeit tourniquet. The first way is you paid less than $20 on Amazon, right? Simple. The tourniquets by themselves, these tourniquets, I've seen them on sale for like 25 is the cheapest I've ever seen them. So if you pay less than $20, it's an absolute counterfeit, or it's training for a training one. And oh, by the way, the training ones are always in blue. They're always blue. So if you're using a training tourniquet for real life, expect a failure. You bought it on Wish.com or Temu or any other cheap knockoff website, expect it to fail. The windlass does not have deep ribbing on the side. Remember I showed you that earlier? All right. You look at it. See that deep ribbing right here? All right. The other ones are just, the counterfeit ones don't have deep ribbing. They're just tiny little ridges that your hand slide over. And then another easy way to look at is there's no raised writing on the back plate of the buckle. Right? I don't know if you can see that. See, no, really. Right there. You see that there's some raised writing right here? That's because they took the time to actually stamp it in. And on the buckle on the back, let me open this up here. Right here on the buckle on the back strap, yeah, can you see the lighting? I don't know if you can see it, but there's writing on here too. There's raised writing on the back of that. Those are the ways you look to see if your tourniquet is real. The thing you want is to apply a tourniquet, get that really tight, and then when you're taking the windlass and turning it, you take the slack out and you start to turn it when this bends. Well, whatever God you believe in and wherever you believe you're going to go, you can have that conversation with someone when you get there because that's what's going to happen. At the end of the story, at the end of the day, you have to know, Rennie, you said it earlier, you have to know when to apply it and then how to apply it.
Yep.
That's what the stop the bleed training is. You know, and let's talk about preparing to self-rescue for just 2 minutes and then we'll move on, right? Gents, the national average response time for calling 911 when you get professional help to your house? You know what
Well,
the national average is?
where I live could be anywhere from 20 minutes to a half hour.
Right. Wow. Chet.
No, for here it's maybe 5 minutes or so, depending. We're pretty
Right.
quick.
So I live in Long Island, New York. Right. This is suburbia mostly until you get out east. Until you get the farmland over there. The national average is 8 to 10 or 8 to 11 minutes. So, what's your plan when you dial 911? You have one, right?
Yeah.
It's a rhetorical question. We both know. We all know that, right?
Yeah.
So, how does it work, right? Does any well, I'm preaching to the choir here, but when someone calls 911, depending on where you are, it goes to the local dispatcher, right? And then the dispatcher picks up the phone and says, 911, what's your emergency? They go through the emergency medical dispatch. They ask you 1,000 questions. They're trying to find out where you are. Ping your cell phone. Trying to
I only
find
give
out.
them. I only give them name, address, and then I hang up.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, that's a great piece of advice.
Because I'm
That's a great
too
piece of
busy
advice.
trying to do other things.
Right. If you are prepared to self-rescue, if you are prepared to self-rescue 100%, right? Absolutely do that, because then you could do other things and you don't have to wait for this emergency medical dispatcher to go through that, that one, if this, then that, if this, then that, if this, then that, all the way down to, oh, you're having chest pain. Oh, I'm missing a finger. Oh, I just applied a tourniquant. That's 3 or 4 minutes.
Lee,
to
if you can't see your messages, we're up against the break.
Okay. How long we got? How long we have left?
He didn't say, he just said break.
All right.
I guess
So
now.
Now,
okay. All right. Welcome to our first break, boys. We'll come back here shortly, and we'll finish this up, and then Chet and Ren, you guys can take the rest of this and do what you guys do best. All right. See you back at the break.
Okay, we'll be here.
I hope so.
No matter what you are, I will always be with you. Doesn't matter what you do, girl. Ooh, girl, want you. No matter where you go, I will always be around. Won't you tell me what you found, girl? Ooh, girl, want you.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. So, what I want to just cover here briefly before we get into how you guys run your show when you do your training, it's about first aid. And we as a group collectively, we talk about this all the time, right? First aid is the initial care given to a person suffering from illness or injury before professional or medical help arrives. It complements every other training and covers a wide range of scenarios, from treating burns to fractures to handling cardiac emergencies, allergies, allergic reactions. The goal is to stabilize the patient. Get this, ready? I'll say this again. The goal is to stabilize the patient and minimize further harm until someone else comes. So, realistically, hey, did you guys see the movie Heat with Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy?
No.
Well, there's a scene there in a diner scene where Melissa McCarthy notices some guy choking on a pancake. Sandra Bullock says, "I've seen this before. I can help you. I know what to do." She says, "I need some vodka, a steak knife, and a straw." Right? So you can imagine what happened. So Sandra Bullock is trying to do a field tracheotomy.
No.
Because the guy's choking. She's walking. "I'm going to cut your throat. You're going to be able to breathe. I'm going to stick the straw in there, and then you'll be able to breathe." She dips the steak knife in, cuts the throat. She counts to the cricoid pressure, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Pushes pressure, and then cuts with the steak knife. First words out of her mouth were, "Oh my God, that's a lot of blood." Right.
Oops.
So first, do no harm, right? If you haven't seen that, you can Google that picture. It's a diner scene from The Heat with Melissa McCarthy. It's actually really, really funny. So don't do that. Don't do anything you're not trained. And oh, by the way, get trained so you know what to do, when to do it, and how to, and how to recognize what's actually going on. So now, Rennie, any thoughts before we move forward on anything we covered with tourniquets, first aid, and stop the bleed?
No, you're right. I mean, like when I was trained on the application of tourniquet, I was trained by the Marshal Service because we had the ICE contract. They taught us even to put it on with one hand. So training, again, repetition is the mother of skill. And that defines training. Doesn't matter whether it's stop the bleed, putting on a tourniquet. I think the most important things that you need to realize with any training, like especially medical, your ABCs, your airway comes first, your breathing, and then your circulation. You need to recognize all three. And so you need to be trained. You got to do a quick assessment. And to do that.
Right. Quick assessment, treat all life-threatening injuries, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely. Chet.
Yeah, probably just the concept of the golden hour of trauma care. If you can get somebody to a hospital into definitive emergency care, surgery, whatever, within an hour, then you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. Your chance of survival goes way up. So your job as a first responder with yourself or assisting others or whomever is to fill in that hour and do the care, as much care as you possibly can within that hour of time. And that makes the patient's survivability much more likely.
Amen to that. For our listeners who are interested in taking these concepts from theory, just talking about it, to practice, there are resources and training available. Time for a shameless plug. Rennie, shameless plug.
Peace of Mind, POMT.org. We're all certified instructors. We can all teach it. We can do it in person, and we can do it virtually. You'll be guaranteed to be trained the right way and the only way. And in the end, you can add hero next to the end, next to your last name.
I like that, man. That's a great tagline. We should do that. How do you add hero to your tagline? Yeah, I love that. All right, cool. Excellent. All right, so, gentlemen, let's bridge the gap between emergency preparedness and firearm training. Rennie, Chet, this is your forte. I wanna ask a question and then let you guys run with it. So, how does understanding how stop the bleed and first aid play into responsible firearms and ownership and use? Rennie?
Well, I mean, first aid's a huge part of it because I can't tell you how many messages that I read during the day about accidental discharges, the way people handle their firearms.
Yeah.
Yeah, and expanding
Chet.
on that, if you're as a responsible gun owner, you're not only are you responsible for taking care of yourself and others and your equipment and positively identifying your targets and the myriad of other things that go on if you're going to be in a deadly force type incident. It really helps to be able to take care of yourself. Basic stuff that should be a big part of your training regimen.
And
Unfortunately, it's not. And it's not just, you're not going to be involved in a gunfight or every day or whatever. It can be something as simple as an accident. You're at the range, you hit a steel target wrong, and ricochets and bounces off your forehead. There's
Valid point, right?
there's a myriad.
Valid point, right?
Yeah. So be prepared to deal with those.
and
Oh, great.
not let's not forget to mention that if you're involved in a deadly force situation, you're also required to render aid to the person that you used the deadly force against. So
Is that on the LEO side and the civilian side, or just as a responsible gun owner?
as a responsible gun owner, I've got to look at the RSA again in New Hampshire, but I believe the RSA in New Hampshire says that you shall render aid.
Yeah, it's definitely on the LEO side.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't think about it like that, right? But all the times you hear about it, especially for the men and women in blue, right? There's a firearm in whatever incident, the +1. I got you, blah blah blah, bang bang bang, and then you hear and you always see them. Aid was applied after they were shot, right?
Yeah.
So conceptually, you got to go from 0 to 100 and then back to 0 again to do that.
Yeah, that's very difficult. And more from the civilian side, I think, though, it's more, the concept of you treat to the level of your training. Well, if you go to court and say, I don't have any training in this, well, that's one thing. But if you're going to be a responsible gun owner, you should. The whole purpose in all of this shit, something people forget, is it's to stop the threat. If you had to put somebody down that's threatening you or the safety of another with lethal force, and you stop that threat, then that's a whole 360. Then you got to go back to saving do the Good Samaritan type of a thing. Maybe it was you that put them down, but it should be you that's trying to save them too.
Yeah, my heart goes out to those of us who are watching or listening who's ever had to have that happen to them, right? Because, like you said, Chad, you gotta stop the threat. What does stopping the threat look like? Well, you have to use lethal force. What is lethal force? Webster defines it as the force, when used, can either cause serious bodily harm or death, right? That's lethal force, as the definition goes. What is this? CC double holder? What does he say? I can't see that. Very point, Lee, New York, as a civilian CC, I don't think I'm legally responsible to provide aid, and I doubt that I'd be thinking clearly in that situation. Well, absolutely. I can't see who said that, but Facebook user. Absolutely, right? Even some law enforcement, some military guys, right? I've been on the end. I've been on all three of those ends. I can tell you, if you're not trained, when you draw your weapon in any sort of lethal engagement, now let's clarify, right? Deadly physical force begets deadly physical force. For civilians and military, for law enforcement and military, you have +1, right? So you can go from verbal to physical to soft to hard, hands to weapons, and then you can go to deadly physical force before civilians can legally. You have +1 because you have a gun. You have less than lethal, right? For Facebook user, as a civilian CCW, it's hi Deborah, how are you? Good, glad to have you on. Happy to see you here. The challenge then is, what is deadly physical force? Right. What is deadly physical force? How do you use it? Versus what Chet and Rennie teach as far as basic firearms, advanced firearms. And hey, gents, correct me if I'm wrong, because I am wrong sometimes, and because I have a lot in my head.
We know.
But yeah, the challenge is when you're teaching law enforcement and military versus civilians, you have to teach them a different set of laws. Is that correct? Or a different set of rules, right?
Yeah, depending on what their operational procedures are. Yeah.
Hey, can I bring out one point that we forgot that's really, really important as far as I'm concerned?
Of course. Of course.
If you're at a range and the Chet, you'd appreciate this, and you have an accidental discharge, or you're at home and you have an accidental discharge, and you got to call 911. And you get the urge to say, there's a shooting at such and such an address.
Exactly.
You need to make it clear, abundantly clear. And I don't know how I can make this abundantly clear without slapping somebody up the side of the head. You need to let them know it was a training mishap. Because in addition to the
cavalry will
local
come,
police
yeah.
department and the fire department, you're going to get the SWAT team too. And you don't want that, you know? So you got to let them know that it was a training incident. It was an accidental discharge. It wasn't an intentional shooting.
Yep. Yep.
Valid point.
Our
Valid point.
SLPs specifically state not to use the word shooting at all, because we are monitored by media and whatever, and it doesn't make a difference whether you say accidental shooting or anything like that. All they're going to hear is shooting, right? So unless you want News 9 helicopters flying over your facility, so for us it's just been an incident.
My organization uses codes.
Well, yeah. Yeah. But anyway.
There's a user up here, Rand01. Well, I don't have the ability to read that. So it's also important to establish that you were the victim when you called 911, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. The legalities of that differ. The legalities of that differ from state to state. And absolutely, right? When we're talking about certain different things about 911, how to call, how to protect yourself, right? We should actually probably do another podcast on that specific.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah, that's a great point because no one talks about that out loud. They don't talk about the after effects of what happens and how to protect yourself. Deborah, that's a great point.
Yep.
Let's make a note to do that in the future. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I like
definitely.
I like that one.
Yeah, we are
All right, so
speed this up, guys.
yeah, freestyling for a moment here. My ADD always kicks in when I start to read the comments and I start reading, and I move forward in. You guys, when you teach, USCCA promotes that approach. Yes, they do. There's one or two other agencies that also promote that approach, but I don't know that they have, Deborah, I don't know that they have live podcasts and live trainings that would actually focus on that. I know state to state it differs, and we don't want to offer any legal advice that goes against any other state rules and regulations. However, we will definitely take a look at that and see what the USCCA, and there's two other organizations I think that do that. But Chet, Rennie, when you guys are training civilians and some of your hotshot LEOs and some of your hotshot military guys, do you always look at their gear before they come on the range, their pistol, right? They have to do a pistol check, they have to do a rig check, and they have to do a gear check, make sure the gear is functioning, right?
They don't come on the range with anything hot either.
Right. Well, rule number one, right? The four basic tenets of firearm leadership or firearm safety. Treat every weapon as if it's loaded. Never point your weapon at something you don't intend to pull the trigger at. 3. Yep. Well, we're gonna get to that. Hold on. That's 4. I have a term for that, Chet. I have a term for that. That's why I saved it for last. 3 is always know what's behind your target as you're shooting. And 4, where are we? Keep your booger hook off the bang switch until you're ready to pull the trigger, right?
Yeah.
Those are the 4. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Right. Where I can't get it. There it is. Right. So, yeah, duly noted. Right. Don't pull the trigger. Don't put your finger on it. Right. The pad of the finger versus the hook of the finger, squeezing, pulling, all that. Right. Now, I say that because I'm not as experienced as you two are with, that training, but I know a few things about a few things, and I relate it to what are you going to do when the shit hits the fan? If like Bruce Lee said when you were punching boards back in 1970, boards don't hit back, right? They don't. They do not, right? So like I said earlier, when your heart rate goes above 140, you start to lose your fine motor skills. Your fine motor skills could be, trigger pull, your modified lever stance, right? Or you're doing this, or it could be, let's flip that around, after your deadly incident or your active shooter or whatever, or you're just trying to provide first aid to something that happened. Where's my tourniquet? If your hands are doing this and you're trying to put that tourniquet, you're doing this, guess what? You're wasting time. We said earlier, you can bleed out in 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds to a minute and a half, you can bleed out. The moral of my story is, and I'm a little long-winded sometimes, is get training, get trained. Don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. Think about that for a second.
Yep.
Don't practice till you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. Practice, 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 practice. Left hand, right hand, practice in your head. Do scenarios. Pressure test it. In the Stop the Bleed training, we have these cubes or these devices that mimic blood flow. When you're wound packing, when you're putting a pressure dressing on, or whether you're tightening up the tourniquet on there, it actually shows blood flow and the occlusion of it. You have to pressure test everything you do. Every time we talk about training, I mention pressure testing. Self-defense, whether it's firearms training, whether it's donning your vest, donning your gear, drawing your gear, knowing where to stage your gear. Practice, 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 practice. It doesn't mean shit that you could look at this on YouTube and be like, oh, wow, that's cool. Right. Here now in Suffolk County, where I'm mostly active, Suffolk and Nassau, I see a lot of the younger cops, not so much the older cops, but the younger cops are putting the tourniquet holders. They have tourniquet holders now that go to the front of your pistol.
Yep.
So on your sidearm, right? Randy, we spoke about this, right? So on your sidearm, when you're here, right? If your sidearm is where this is your sidearm, you actually have a tourniquet that attaches to your holster right in front. So when you grab your sidearm, all you gotta do is come forward and then grab your tourniquet, and that's for you.
Yeah.
That's for your survival. Practice, 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 train, yeah. Right?
Yeah, listen, guys, we're getting short on time. I think we might want to look into a whole separate podcast specifically for firearms. I think. What do you guys think about that idea? Because there's a lot of stuff, and I think talk about the equipment and the equipment setup. Yeah, I think we can get a lot of better audience participation out of something like that too, and give just devote a whole hour just to that pretty much. Sure. Probably save that for the debrief, but because we're getting short on time and I got a cruiser pretty soon. What do you want to do?
Yeah. So. No, absolutely. Which brings us to a great point. Rennie, before the show, we talked about. I can't get my face in this camera. I hate this thing. So if I look crooked, just ignore me because I'm trying to get straight in the camera here. But next week is Christmas Eve day. We're going to take a break and then we shall return the following week. But in that time, I want everyone to have a happy, healthy, safe, and joyous holiday season. And hopefully, God willing, you don't have to use any of the things we talked about. Chet, your thoughts?
Yeah, be safe, be situationally aware, especially now during the religious holidays. If you see something, say something, and be prepared to act. So, Merry Christmas.
Prepare to self-rescue.
Prepare to self-rescue, yes. So, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, folks.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Like I was telling you earlier, I generally don't go to church, but my family's going to church on Christmas Eve.
You're going to go sheepdog.
Being the one that has the gun, I'm going with them.
Yeah, yeah. Deborah, thank you so much for coming on
Yeah.
board. We
Deborah.
appreciate your interaction. And stay safe until next time. This is another episode of Situation Awareness, Real Talk with Real People. All right, folks. Be
Merry
well.
Christmas, Happy
Talk to
New
you
Year.
soon.
Thank you for being supporters.